to hell!
There's something about 1995 that just hits different. The energy, the boldness, the way Black filmmakers were carving out space and telling stories Hollywood had ignored for decades. Tales from the Hood landed right in that sweet spot, part of a movement that gave us everything from Friday to Dead Presidents, films that centered Black voices without apology. But what went into making this groundbreaking horror anthology? Buckle up, because these 15 facts will take you behind the scenes of a cultural phenomenon. Fact number 1. Let's start with the heavyweight behind it all. Tales from the Hood was the very first horror movie that Spike Lee ever produced. Think about that for a second. This is Spike Lee we're talking about, the man who gave us Do the Right Thing, Malcolm X, and School Days, a filmmaker known for hard-hitting social commentary and dramatic storytelling. Not exactly someone you'd associate with jump scares and supernatural revenge. But that's what made this collaboration so special. Spike saw something in this project that aligned with his vision of cinema as a tool for social change. He understood that horror could be just as powerful as drama when it came to addressing systemic racism, police brutality, and the trauma that Black communities faced daily. And to this day, the only other horror movie on his producing resume is Tales from the Hood 2, which came out decades later in 2018. That's how selective Spike was with the genre. He only attached his name when the message mattered. The connection between Spike and director Rusty Cundieff wasn't random either. Cundieff had actually starred in Spike Lee's 1988 film, School Days, playing one of the college students navigating the complexities of Black identity on a historically Black campus. That relationship, that mutual respect between them, created the foundation for this horror project to come to life. Spike trusted Rusty's vision, and Rusty delivered something that would resonate for generations. Fact number 2. Speaking of Rusty Cundieff, here's something that'll surprise you. Tales from the Hood was only his second film as a director. His first? A mockumentary called Fear of a Black Hat that dropped in 1993. If you haven't seen it, imagine this is Spinal Tap, but focused on West Coast hip-hop culture. It was sharp, it was funny, and it showed that Cundieff had a gift for satire and social commentary wrapped in entertainment. But going from a hip-hop comedy mockumentary to a full-blown horror anthology in just 2 years, that's a massive leap. It demonstrated Cundieff's versatility as a filmmaker and his willingness to take risks. He wasn't interested in being pigeonholed into one genre. He wanted to tell stories that mattered, and he was willing to use whatever genre would amplify those stories most effectively. What's remarkable is that Cundieff didn't approach Tales from the Hood like a novice. He came in with confidence, with a clear vision of what he wanted to say and how he wanted to say it. He surrounded himself with talented people, learned from the best, and created something that would stand the test of time. For a second film, that's extraordinary. It proved that great filmmaking isn't about how many movies you've made. It's about having something important to say and the courage to say it boldly. Fact number 3. Now, let's talk about what drove Cundieff to make this film in the first place. He's been open about the fact that his father was a major influence on his approach to storytelling. Cundieff's dad had been an active member in many civil rights groups throughout his life, fighting for justice and equality during some of America's most turbulent decades. That background shaped everything about how Rusty approached Tales from the Hood. He didn't want to make a horror movie for horror's sake, just another film with cheap scares and forgettable characters. He wanted every frame to carry weight, every story to illuminate something real about the Black experience in America. His father's activism taught him that art should serve a purpose beyond entertainment, that it should challenge, provoke, and inspire change. You can feel that intention in every segment of the film. The story about the corrupt cops isn't just a ghost story. It's about the Rodney King beating and countless other incidents of police violence. The domestic abuse segment isn't exploitation. It's a painful examination of cycles of violence within our own communities. The gang warfare finale isn't glorification. It's a tragedy about how systemic oppression destroys young Black lives. Cundieff was carrying his father's legacy forward, using horror as his vehicle for activism and awareness. Fact number 4. The anthology format wasn't just a stylistic choice. It was a strategic decision that allowed the film to tackle multiple issues without diluting any of them. Cundieff drew inspiration from Tales from the Crypt, that iconic HBO series that terrified and delighted audiences throughout the late 80s and early 90s. But where Tales from the Crypt often focused on moral lessons about greed, infidelity, and general human nastiness, Cundieff wanted to zoom in specifically on racial and social injustices. By using the anthology structure, he could dedicate focused time to police brutality in one segment, domestic violence in another, institutional racism in a third, and gang violence in the fourth, all while maintaining a cohesive narrative framework through Mr. Sims's funeral home. Each story could breathe, could develop its characters and message without being rushed or overshadowed by the others. This format also allowed audiences to engage with difficult topics in digestible chunks. Instead of one overwhelming 2-hour examination of systemic oppression, viewers got 4 distinct stories that built upon each other, creating a cumulative emotional impact. It was brilliant storytelling, entertaining enough to keep people watching, while heavy enough to linger in their minds long after the credits rolled. Fact number 5. Here's what sets Tales from the Hood apart from almost every other horror film of its era. Rusty Cundieff has always considered it to be a redemptive horror film, one where the horror itself serves as cosmic justice for the sins and racism of the past. Think about that. In most horror movies, the scares are arbitrary. People die because they made bad choices or were in the wrong place at the wrong time. But in Tales from the Hood, every supernatural occurrence is earned. Every haunting is justified. The souls of enslaved people rising up to exact revenge on a racist politician? That's redemption. A unalivinged activist returning to punish his corrupt cop killers? That's justice. Abusive monsters being dragged to hell? That's karma. The horror in this film isn't random. It's righteous. It's the universe correcting wrongs that the legal system, society, and history failed to address. This approach transformed the genre conventions. Instead of rooting for final girls or wondering who would survive, audiences found themselves rooting for the ghosts, the monsters, the supernatural forces of retribution. It flipped the script entirely, making the horror elements heroic rather than villainous. And that thematic choice elevated Tales from the Hood from entertainment to cultural commentary, from scary movie to social statement. Fact number 6. Now let's talk about the man who became the face of this entire film, Clarence Williams III as Mr. Sims, the funeral director. That performance is unforgettable. Those wide, knowing eyes. That gravelly voice delivering lines like, "This is the shit," with perfect comedic timing mixed with genuine menace. He became an instant icon, the crypt keeper of Black horror. But this wasn't Williams' first dance with horror anthologies. 3 years before Tales from the Hood, he'd appeared in a Tales from the Crypt episode called Maniac at Large that aired in 1992. So he understood the format, understood how to balance horror with dark humor, understood the rhythm of anthology storytelling. That experience made him perfect for the role of Mr. Sims. What Williams brought to the character went beyond just the creepy funeral director archetype. He gave Mr. Sims depth, a sense of purpose, You got the feeling that he wasn't just telling scary stories, he was teaching lessons, dispensing wisdom through terror, guiding lost souls toward either redemption or damnation, and audiences connected with that. He wasn't a villain, he was more like a supernatural teacher, showing characters and viewers alike what happens when you choose evil over good, selfishness over community, violence over peace. Fact number 7. The visual style of Tales from the Hood deserves its own recognition, and a lot of that credit goes to cinematographer Anthony B. Richmond. If that name sounds familiar, it's because he also shot Candyman, the legendary urban horror film that came out just 3 years earlier in 1992. Candyman had this beautiful, haunting visual language, the way it captured Chicago's Cabrini Green housing projects with both harsh realism and dreamlike atmosphere. Richmond brought that same artistic sensibility to Tales from the Hood. He understood how to make horror beautiful, how to frame shots that felt both grounded in reality and elevated into something mythic. The lighting, the camera angles, the way he captured both the mundane streets of Los Angeles and the supernatural elements, it all worked together to create a cohesive visual experience. Having a cinematographer of Richmond's caliber elevated the entire production. This wasn't some cheap direct-to-video horror flick with flat lighting and boring compositions. Every frame felt intentional, felt crafted. It showed respect for the audience and respect for the genre, proving that Black horror could be just as visually sophisticated as any other film. Fact number 8. The third story in Tales from the Hood, KKK Comeuppance, features a racist politician named Duke Metger who buys a former plantation and gets terrorized by the vengeful spirits of enslaved people. That name wasn't random. It was a direct and deliberate call-out. Duke Metger was based on 2 real-life white supremacists, David Duke, who was a Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, and Tom Metzger, who founded the White Aryan Resistance. These weren't historical figures from the distant past. David Duke had literally served in the Louisiana House of Representatives from 1989 to 1992, just a few years before the movie came out. He'd also run for Senate and even for president. Tom Metzger was actively leading white supremacist movements throughout the 80s and 90s. These were contemporary threats, real dangers to Black communities and democracy itself. By naming the character Duke Metger, Cundieff was making it crystal clear what he was commenting on. This wasn't subtle allegory, it was direct confrontation. He was telling audiences, hey, these racist monsters aren't just movie villains. They're in our government, they're running for office, they're real. And he was using horror to imagine what justice might look like if the system actually held these people accountable. Fact number 9. Here's what makes that previous fact even more chilling and relevant. When Tales from the Hood came out in 1995, David Duke had already served his term in the Louisiana legislature. But the film's warning about white supremacists in politics wasn't just about the past. It was prophetic about the future. By 2018, a record number of admitted white supremacists and open racists were running for political office across America. What seemed shocking in 1995 became normalized just over 2 decades later. The issues that Tales from the Hood dramatized, racism in positions of power, the failure of institutions to protect marginalized communities, the persistence of white supremacist ideology didn't go away. They got worse in many ways, became more brazen, more visible. That's what gives Tales from the Hood its staying power. It wasn't just commenting on its moment, it was diagnosing systemic problems that continue to plague society. Every time you think America has moved past this ugliness, reality proves otherwise. And every time that happens, Tales from the Hood feels more relevant, more necessary, more urgent. It's a horror movie that refuses to become outdated because the horrors it depicts remain horrifyingly real. Fact number 10. Here's a detail that most viewers completely miss, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. Mr. Sims's hair, Clarence Williams III's distinctive hairstyle in the film, is deliberately styled to match Frederick Douglass, the famous abolitionist and social reformer who escaped slavery and became one of the most powerful voices against it in the 19th century. This wasn't an accident, it was a visual callback, a way of connecting Mr. Sims to a legacy of Black resistance and moral authority. Frederick Douglass fought against slavery and injustice with words, with activism, with unwavering courage. Mr. Sims fights against evil with supernatural stories and cosmic justice. Both are teachers in their own way. Both are guiding people toward righteousness. And here's a fun connection. This wasn't the only time a filmmaker used Frederick Douglass as visual inspiration for a character. Samuel L. Jackson's character, Elijah from Unbreakable and Glass, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, was also visually inspired by Douglass. It's become a kind of cinematic shorthand. If you want to signal wisdom, moral clarity, and historical weight, you reference Frederick Douglass. It's a way of honoring that legacy while creating new stories that carry forward his fight for justice. Fact number 11. The music in Tales from the Hood does so much heavy lifting, and that's thanks to composer Christopher Young. His score walks this perfect line between traditional horror music, those ominous strings and sudden stings that make you jump, and something more culturally specific, more rooted in the Black experience. Christopher Young wasn't some newcomer either. This is the man who composed music for urban legend, The Grudge, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, Drag Me to Hell, and Sinister. He's a legitimate horror music legend, someone who understands how sound can manipulate emotion, build tension, and enhance scares. Having him on board was a major get for the production. What Young brought to Tales from the Hood was versatility. Each of the 4 stories needed its own musical identity while still feeling connected to the overall film. The police brutality story needed righteous anger in its score. The domestic violence segment needed something that captured both the terror and the tragedy. The KKK story needed something that evoked both the horror of slavery and the power of spiritual revenge. And Young delivered on all of it, creating a soundscape that elevated every scene. Fact number 12. Let's talk locations for a minute. The rogue cop revelation story, the one with the corrupt police officers who unaliving a Black activist, was partially shot at Inglewood Cemetery. Now, if you're a TV buff from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, you've definitely seen this cemetery before, even if you didn't realize it. Inglewood Cemetery showed up in several episodes of Columbo, that iconic detective show with Peter Falk in the rumpled trench coat. It appeared in Dallas, the primetime soap opera about wealthy Texas oil families. It was in Dynasty, another glamorous nighttime soap. And it showed up in Melrose Place, that 90s drama about young people living in Los Angeles. There's something both practical and symbolic about filming a story about police corruption and unaliving in a location that had been used in so many mainstream TV shows. On the practical side, it's a beautiful atmospheric cemetery that photographs well. But symbolically, it's like Cundieff was saying, we're filming in the same spaces as your comfortable mainstream entertainment, but we're telling stories that mainstream media ignored. It's a quiet act of reclamation, using familiar spaces to tell unfamiliar truths. Fact number 13. David Alan Grier's casting in Tales from the Hood was one of the boldest choices in the entire film. In the mid-90s, Grier was best known for his work on In Living Color, the groundbreaking sketch comedy show that launched so many careers. He was the guy who made you laugh every week with characters and impressions. He was comedy, pure and simple. Then Tales from the Hood comes along and casts him as Carl, an abusive boyfriend who terrorizes his girlfriend in one of the film's most difficult-to-watch segments. And audiences were shocked. They couldn't reconcile the funny man from TV with this monster on screen. That cognitive dissonance was exactly what Rusty Cundieff wanted. Cundieff has talked about this casting decision openly. He wanted David Alan Grier specifically because of his comedy background. He wanted audiences to be uncomfortable, to have their expectations shattered, to realize that someone they laughed at could be genuinely terrifying. It was a calculated risk that paid off brilliantly. Grier's performance is legitimately disturbing, bringing real intensity and menace to the role. What many people didn't know at the time, and what Cundieff was very aware of, was that Grier had serious Shakespearean training as an actor. He'd studied at Yale Drama School. He had the range and the technical skill to pull off dramatic, intense roles. He wasn't just a comedian playing against type. He was a trained actor finally getting the chance to show what he could really do. And he delivered one of the most memorable performances in the entire film. Fact number 14. This fact is genuinely disturbing, but it reveals something important about the film and about audiences. In the original cut of Tales from the Hood, the scene where Carl beats his girlfriend Sissy with a belt was much longer and significantly more intense than what ended up in the final version. During a test screening, something really uncomfortable happened. As the scene played out, the audience started laughing. But as it continued, as the violence became more sustained and more brutal, the theater went completely silent. People stopped laughing. The discomfort became unbearable. Rusty Cundieff has reflected on this audience reaction, and his analysis is really insightful. He believes that people were using laughter as a defense mechanism, a way to cope with images that were too painful and too real to process. Domestic violence is something that affects so many communities, something that people know happens but don't want to confront directly. When faced with a realistic depiction on screen, the audience's first instinct was to deflect through humor. But the scene was so well crafted and Grier's performance was so intense that the humor couldn't sustain itself. Cundieff ended up trimming the scene down for the final cut. But that test screening reaction told him everything he needed to know. He'd created something that hit too close to home, that forced audiences to confront an ugly reality they'd rather ignore. That's powerful filmmaking, even if it's uncomfortable. Fact number 15. Here's something that'll blow your mind if you're ever in Los Angeles. Mr. Sims's funeral home, that iconic, creepy building that serves as the framing device for the entire movie, isn't actually a funeral home at all. It's just a regular house in a residential neighborhood in LA. And it's still standing today. You could literally drive by this house right now. People live near it, walk past it, probably have no idea that it's a piece of horror movie history. It's not in some special movie studio district or preserved as a landmark. It's just there, part of everyday Los Angeles life. And here's the kicker. It's located only a few blocks away from the house exterior that was used for Charmed, that popular 90s and 2000s TV show about sister witches. So, in the span of a few blocks in residential LA, you've got the funeral home from Tales from the Hood and the Halliwell Manor from Charmed, two iconic pieces of supernatural television and film history, just sitting there in the same neighborhood. There's something beautifully democratic about that. These aren't grand monuments or tourist attractions. They're regular buildings that became extraordinary through the magic of filmmaking and storytelling. It reminds us that art can happen anywhere, that you don't need elaborate sets or massive budgets to create something memorable. You just need vision, creativity, and something important to say. Tales from the Hood wasn't just another 90s horror flick trying to cash in on the success of Scream or I Know What You Did Last Summer. It was something deeper, something more important. It was a film that used the language of horror to talk about real-world horrors, police brutality, domestic violence, systemic racism, and the ways that evil perpetuates itself across generations. The fact that it's aged so well, that new generations keep discovering it, that it feels as relevant in 2025 as it did in 1995, that speaks to Rusty Cundieff's vision and the entire team's commitment to making something that mattered. They didn't just want to scare you, they wanted to make you think, to make you uncomfortable, to make you recognize the monsters in our midst aren't supernatural. They're all too human. From Spike Lee's involvement to Clarence Williams III's iconic performance, from David Alan Grier's against-type casting to Christopher Young's haunting score, every element came together to create something special. It proved that Black horror could be smart, political, entertaining, and terrifying all at once. It proved that anthology films could tackle serious issues without sacrificing scares. It proved that independent filmmakers with something to say could compete with studio productions. 30 years later, Tales from the Hood stands as a landmark in Black cinema and horror cinema alike. It opened doors for films like Get Out, Us, and Candyman's 2021 sequel. It showed that audiences were hungry for horror that reflected their experiences, their fears, their struggles, and it did it all while delivering genuine scares, memorable characters, and a story that refuses to be forgotten. That's the power of Tales from the Hood. That's why these 15 facts matter, because they reveal a film made with intention, crafted with care, and designed to endure. And 3 decades later, it's still teaching lessons, still sparking conversations, still reminding us that the scariest monsters are the ones we create ourselves. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the classic horror film, Tales from the Hood, don't forget to like this video, share it with other fans, and subscribe to our channel for more wild facts about your favorite urban horror films. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another upload. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.